court will hear the entire case in the fall term, beginning in October of next year. The concurrence by Justice Thomas was really instructive. What he said, and it was joined by the new Justice Gorsuch, what he said is the idea that the Supreme Court would make up this new exception for individuals overseas who have, quote, bona fide connections to either people or entities in the United States can basically bypass the president's travel pause. Now, that's just ridiculous. The Supreme Court tried to impart its own legislative authority, which it does not have under our Constitution, onto this Trump travel pause. That wasn't what the Trump administration conceived of. So they just made that whole thing up, and now that's going to be another hurdle for judges to clear when they have to consider exigent circumstances on the part of refugees or would-be travelers to the United States from those affected countries. So that is not a win for the president on that specific outlined rule, a group of exceptions.
Because they just added that. That's the same thing John Roberts, the Supreme Court Chief Justice, added to Obamacare. He just gets out a pen and starts writing extra stuff.
Well, that's exactly why we need justices on the Supreme Court who understand their role is circumscribed by our framers. They do not have the right to conceive of new legislative demands and put them on states, localities, or the federal government. That's not how it works. If they want to be legislators, they should resign their positions and they should go run for office. But they're justices on the Supreme Court. I found that to be very disturbing. Because somebody has a relative in the United States does not override the president's supreme executive authority under our Constitution to deter any national security concerns and address them as he sees fit. So that subcategory they devised in the majority, well, that's just wrong. So Justice Thomas, my old justice, and Gorsuch are totally right on that. So that was the good news is that Justice Gorsuch seems to be just phenomenal so far.
Someone just said he is Scalia. Meanwhile, the White House, even though you could break it down and say there's some areas of concern, they look at it as momentum is going their direction. If you see the VA bill that was signed over the weekend, the fact that the Senate is taking up health care, the fact that he seems to be aggressively going after things in Syria and warning them ahead of time, it seems like we have a foreign policy very compliant with his image. But something else happened. When he decided to back out of the Paris Agreement, a lot of cities and states and a lot of mayors said, we're going to stick with the Paris deal. Mike Bloomberg, the former mayor of New York City, has taken to another level. He is launching a $17 million contest to encourage liberal cities to sidestep what the Trump administration did, and that's pull back from those constraints. What's your take on that?
Imagine having that much money where you can just sponsor contests for whatever issue you care about.
Right.
This is what he did on gun control. He threw a lot of money into various activist efforts. He's done this for years. This isn't surprising at all. If Michael Bloomberg wants to throw his money, out the window for these types of efforts, he can do that. I mean, it's just, I don't have any problem with that. What we need, however, is from the administration a continued national tutorial on the proper role of the federal government vis-a-vis these international institutions and international agreements that aren't treaties but could in the future impose really strict rules and regulations on American businesses that are not applicable to the Chinese or the Indians or the Indonesians. And so I just hope, given the massive activist push against what President Trump is trying to do here, I hope that we continue to see a consistent and really powerful messaging on issues such as climate change. We care about the environment and conservation efforts. I certainly do. We also have to balance that against the interests of American sovereignty, liberty, freedom, and our willingness to trade away our sovereignty to international institutions that have been very hostile to American rights and freedom in the past. So that's what they have to keep doing. Michael Bloomberg, I'm not sure what that's going to achieve. But look, if it makes them feel better, I guess let them blow the money.
Is that what the American people want? I know that's what Michael Bloomberg want, but what does America want?
I guess don't compete in the contest.
Well, you dangle some money. You dangle money out to local and state governments, and they'll be willing to bite at anything. Look what happened with Common Core. We had a lot of states who were willing to go for that Microsoft money that Bill Gates and the Gates Foundation put out there. You have to do what's best for the people of your state, regardless of whether you're going to get $100 grand or $1 million from someone like Bloomberg.
But what can $17 million buy you anyway? It's
I don't think it buys you much.
Not anymore.
Laura, let's talk a little bit about this. You know that when you click around on the other channels, there's a lot of talk about Russia over the last month or so.
I haven't noticed.
Yeah.
Joe Biden, the former VP, was a lifeguard there during his senior year of high school in 1962. The pool is now called the Joseph R. Biden Jr. Aquatic Center. It's a picture that, I mean, literally, it's been going around for hours and hours.
Looks like it was photoshopped.
I
but he
know.
actually was wearing a suit.
Yep.
Got up in the chair. Took the picture.
My dad was a lifeguard, and he was wearing a tuxedo getting ready to go to a wedding, and someone in the pool needed his assistance, and he was leaving the pool and jumped in.
Was it a rental?
Probably, with some ruffles.
Fantastic. All right, good luck with that deposit. Meanwhile, straight ahead, what happened when we tried to ask Bernie Sanders about the FBI investigation into his wife?
Where are you from? Fox News. CBS is reporting on this. Politico is reporting on this. Do you still believe it's politically motivated, sir?
Well, why the dodge? Newt Gingrich fills in the blanks coming up.
Well, after a string of special election defeats, more and more Democrats are calling for an adjustment in the party's messaging, one that swings away from talking about Russia all the time. A new Harvard-Harris poll finds 73% of voters are afraid that the Russia probe is distracting from other key issues. Mark Penn is the co-director of the Harvard-Harris poll and the managing partner of the Stagwell Group. He also worked as the lead pollster during Bill Clinton's presidency. Joins us right now from our nation's capital. Mark, good morning to you.
Good morning.
You kind of gave us a heads up on this poll coming out, and what you had indicate was that you have found that 2/3 of the country say that the Russia investigation is actually hurting the country. Explain that.
Yeah, this was a very surprising finding because so many people in the previous polls and even this poll say, hey, I want these investigations.
Right.
Hey, I'm even okay with a special counsel, 75%. But now they look back and see how this is working out, and 64% say it's hurting the country. Why? Because Congress and the president aren't focused on the issues that they really care about. And you ask them, 56% say Congress should not be focused as much on Russia, should focus more on the issues, and those are health care, terrorism, the economy, jobs, tax reform, infrastructure. Hey, the people don't want the policies that are going to make their lives better interrupted by these investigations. Okay,
so Mark, if the folks out there in America, and we've heard this is true because a number of Democrats said, you know, I just had 25 town halls. Nobody wants us to be talking about Russia. They want us to be talking about health care and jobs and stuff like that. Okay, the topic du jour today is what they're going to do about the Affordable Care Act. And you've got the Republicans trying to change it, and you've got the Democrats seemingly obstructing. They're just going, you know, we're taking a pass. We're not helping you on this. Is that what America wants, to see one party not even put their toe in the water?
Well, no, and I think we've consistently found that 89% say, hey, the two parties should work together,
right,
and not just stick to their principles. Now, in health care, I don't think the Republicans really have a coherent enough message. I do think we didn't really poll it as much in this, but voters in last month's poll are very concerned about pre-existing conditions, very concerned about Medicaid. I think this is not as clear-cut an issue. I think you see the president, the administration winning on right now on terrorism, on creating jobs and the economy. And health care, I think the Democrats, even with some extreme rhetoric, have scored some real points here.
Right. Exit question. Do the Republicans pass something this week?
Boy, it looks really tough. You know, I think the Republicans are going to have to show party discipline. Remember, right now, the ratings of the Republican Party are way below Trump. So are the Democratic Party's ratings. They're both below Trump because nobody's getting anything done.
Yeah.
People have to get things done.
All right, let's see what happens. They've got till the 4th of July, supposedly. Mark Penn, thank you very much for joining us from our nation's capital.
Thank you.
All right. 20 minutes now after the top of the hour. Still ahead. Just call it the Great American Debate. Celebrate the 4th of July with fireworks or bald eagles? one or the other? The dilemma facing one town coming up.
$1 trillion for Medicaid. People with Alzheimer's and strokes, heart conditions, we need Medicaid. No middle-class family can afford a nursing home by themselves. If President Trump keeps listening to Paul Ryan, we'll all be on the street. Or something even worse.
That was supposed to be Paul Ryan throwing, and this is out again, throwing Granny off the cliff because of his plan, even though it's a Senate plan, his health care plan.
Which the Democrats say the plan is to reduce Medicaid by $800 billion.
So you know right now on Capitol Hill, the Republicans have the titanic task of trying to put another health care plan together while not revamping it to the point where they'll need 60 votes in the Senate. And right now the CBO score came out, and the Senate is looking at that and seeing where the political fallout and where the political pluses are. Yesterday afternoon, we were invited down to speak to Speaker Ryan as the CBO broke and talk about what's at stake, what they've accomplished so far in the House, because he feels like the message is not getting out. Because like we said before in jest, it's all about Russia, Russia, Russia. Here's part one of our two-part series. Mr. Speaker, while you were in your series of meetings, the CBO came out with a score. You knew it was coming out. And a brief look shows that over the course of a 10-year period, you're going to save $321 billion off the deficit. However, $22 million will be without coverage.
What they're basically saying at the Congressional Budget Office is if you're not going to force people to buy Obamacare, if you're not going to force people to buy something they don't want, then they won't buy it. So it's not that people are getting pushed off a plan, it's that people will choose not to buy something they don't like or want. And that's the difference here. So by repealing the individual and employer mandate, which mandates people buy this health insurance that they can't afford, that don't like, if you don't mandate that they're going to do this, then that many people won't do it. It also says that if states don't expand Medicaid in the future, then fewer people will go on Medicaid in those states that don't expand it in the future.
Premiums are going to be 10% higher in 2019, but 30% lower in 2020.
Well, that's the whole point of our bill, is to get premiums down. We've been hit with double-digit premium increases in Obamacare. It's one of the reasons why people are paying the penalty, not even buying the insurance. It's one of the reasons why the system's in a collapse right now. Right. So the key is to give people more choices, have more competition, bring premiums down. That's why this bill, and CBO even says so, will bring premiums down so families can afford the coverage.
I think you saw what Democrats are doing. It's a Paul Ryan lookalike throwing a granny off a cliff. What is your reaction? Can you really laugh that off at this point?
Oh, yeah. I'm so used to this by now. I think the left is out of gas. I think they just basically decide resist, resist, resist. They want government-run health care. Government-run health care is collapsing while we speak. It's not working. And so what are we doing? We're replacing it with a law that will actually work. Anthem Blue Cross Blue Shield just said, you pass this law, it's going to stabilize the market, it's going to bring down prices, it will get more plans being offered to people.
Newt Gingrich said, if the Republicans get health care wrong, they lose the House. Do you feel that there's that much at stake?
Well, I think it's probably it's the biggest signature issue we have, and it's the biggest promise we've ever made in the modern era. We said if we get elected, we will repeal and replace Obamacare. We did this in the House. It is now the Senate's term. I think they're going to do it. So I do agree with Newt that we were elected to solve people's problems, to improve people's lives. Fixing health care is a big part of that. But it also means we've got to move on to these other issues. And that's what I've told you this before. We're doing so much here in Congress, knocking down our agenda, our list of items to do, but a lot of people aren't paying attention to it, or the media is not paying attention to it. Nevertheless, we're still trudging ahead.
You have passed 158 bills. President Obama had 131. President Bush had 67. Bill Clinton had 60. 158 bills have resulted in 37 laws for President Trump signed into law. President Obama had 24. President Bush had 15. Numbers don't lie.
We laid out with the president a plan for this term of Congress, 2017-2018. How do we keep our promises? How do we improve people's lives? How do we enact an agenda? We're well on our way in doing that. And remember when the day Jim Comey was testifying in the Senate? That's all anybody paid attention to. Guess what the House did that day? We repealed and replaced Dodd-Frank. This week, we're doing medical liability reform. We're doing 2 immigration bills. Kate's Law, sanctuary cities.
How would you grade the president?
I think he's doing fine. I think he's doing fine. I think the key is don't get distracted. And I'm not saying he's distracted, but What we do in Congress is we're not getting distracted by different issues. We're focusing on doing our jobs. Right. Most of the media wants to focus on investigations. Those are important. Those are getting done. They don't incapacitate us.
And by any chance, do you have a letter grade for President Trump?
I don't do letter grades. I think what matters at the end of the day is did we do our jobs or not. Right. We have an opportunity in front of us. We're making good progress on these things. We campaigned on doing serious things with this president. It's going to take us time to do those things. Right. But we get this done. This will be the most productive presidency in Congress in our lifetime.
Excellent.
Yeah, so I appreciate the time and interest, but I wanted to do is what we kind of did with Senator Tim Scott about a year, 6 months ago, is spend a day with him. So he goes to a church, and he goes to an urban group, and then he goes back to a leadership, then he meets one-on-one families. This is as close as we got. He said, I'll let you into a leadership meeting. In fact, we have some of that footage, and no one's seen this in 60 Minutes 10 years ago, and he was not the speaker, obviously, back then. And they were a little shocked to see me in the camera. His office is actually attached to that. The empty seat across to his right, I don't know if you can see it there, you'll see it tomorrow, is for Steve Scalise.
How many people in the leaders meeting?
There looked to be 10 to 12, and you saw Martha. You can't see Martha McSally, but you see back of Kevin McCarthy's head. And they actually let me sign a few things into law because I had some extra time.
So your message to Paul Ryan is, thank you for the interview, but I really wanted 24 hours.
Right, I did want. You had to hear his day. He flies in Wisconsin, a meeting at 6 o'clock in the morning, another 8 o'clock in the morning, 8:30, emergency meeting right before he met me. It goes on.
He's a busy guy.
Well, he doesn't want to spend too much time with you, Brian.
Right, you guys know what it's like.
You only get an hour.
Yeah, thank you.
All right.
All right, coming up, what happened when we tried to ask Bernie Sanders about that FBI investigation into his wife?
Where are you from? Fox News. CBS is reporting on this. Politico is reporting on this. Do you still believe it's politically motivated, sir?
Why the dodge? Newt Gingrich is going to fill in the blanks for you coming up next.
Newt Gingrich said if the Republicans get health care wrong, they lose the House. Do you feel that there's that much at stake?
Well, I think it's probably it's the biggest signature issue we have, and it's the biggest promise we've ever made in the modern era. We said if we get elected, we will repeal and replace Obamacare. We did this in the House. It is now the Senate's term. I think they're going to do it. So I do agree with Newt that we were elected to solve people's problems, to improve people's lives. Fixing health care is a big part of that.
Paul Ryan yesterday. Now let's bring in the former speaker who's got the #1 book in the country right now, Understanding Donald Trump, Newt Gingrich. Newt, he agrees with you, kinda. Understanding Trump, I should say. He agrees with you, kinda. I didn't want to put it like that stark view, but you hold to that. That's what's at stake right now, correct?
Sure. Let me say, first of all, I thought that was a great interview.
Thank you.
And I thought that Paul Ryan did a great job, and you did a great job, and I think he's got a lot to be proud of that they've been doing. I mean, their veterans reform alone is historic and remarkable. The point I'm making is one about substance and two about communication. This is a work in progress. The Senate's got to get something through. They got to go to conference. They've got to come out with a bill that they can explain to the American people that the American people conclude is better than Obamacare. At least half of that is a communications problem. One quick example. After all the news media talking about cutting Medicaid in the House Republican bill, I did some research. It actually goes up 20% over the next 10 years. Now think about that. All this talk about cut. No, it's a 20% increase over the next 10 years. So half the Republican problem, or more than half, is a communications problem, because if you went to people and said, gee, they're actually putting 20% more into Medicaid over the next decade, most people would relax and think, hey, that's a serious effort in the right direction.
Yeah, I don't know if you can put so much stock in the CBO report, because we remember it said that Obamacare was going to be successful. But the CBO report that just came out yesterday, it says it reduces the federal deficit, it will eventually lower the premiums, and 22 million Americans will not be insured, but that's because they're choosing not to be. But if you listen to what the Democrats were saying yesterday, they all hate it, they hate the plan, they say it's going to kill people. Listen.
I know this is a sensitive issue, but I'm going to raise it. And that is that the horrible and unspeakable truth is that if this legislation were to pass, thousands of our fellow Americans every single year will die.
We do know that many more people, millions, hundreds of thousands of people will die if this bill passes.
1,000 to 2,000 people will die if you cut 750,000 people from Medicaid. So that means you're killing 1 to 2,000, killing them.
That's it.
What's your response to that?
You know, I think the Democrats' capacity for total irresponsibility and total dishonesty is almost unbounded. What they just said was a lie. Let me give you an example. We have 8,000 federal community health centers in this country. They don't even count as part of this bill. 8,000 places where people can get help. We have lots of new approaches and new techniques. The state of Maine has adopted a series of reforms that are remarkable, that are providing a better future. People are having their income go up as much as 116% on average under the Maine reforms. Kansas has reformed Medicaid to provide better care for more people at lower costs. So this notion that the Republicans want to kill people, it's almost pathetic that the Democratic Party has no new ideas, no new solutions, takes no responsibility for the disaster that they passed with Obamacare, and all they have left are absurd, wild charges that no serious adult, no serious American is going to actually look at and say, oh, yeah, that's really a problem. It's a lie.
Mr. Speaker, do you think that the Russia story is finally out of gas? I mean, for a week and a half now, it seems to have turned the president's way and more at the former president, but you've seen other things happen that have been unprecedented. Where's the Russia story going as it relates to this administration?
You know, in addition to writing Understanding Trump, I write novels about terrorism. I wouldn't have the nerve to write this story as a novel, because guess what's about to happen? The Congress is about to have to call Barack Obama in to testify under oath about when he knew about Russian meddling. Was it really last August, as the news stories say? Who told him? Right. Why did he do nothing? Who was in the meetings when he decided to do nothing? It's going to turn out, yes, there's a big Russian story. It's Barack Obama, not Donald Trump. And you cannot make this stuff up.
You are predicting he's going to go in and testify?
I think the Congress has an obligation to call him in. How can you be told the President of the United States knew last August the Russians were, in fact, involved in this and not ask him, and ask him under oath? I mean, how can you be so irresponsible? The House and Senate are going to have to call Obama in and say, who told you? When did you have the meetings? Who advised you? Why did you decide not to do anything? And then why did you keep quiet for 6 months while everybody looked at the Russians and Trump when you, in fact, had this information last August?
So
absolutely, he's got to come in and testify.
So there was collusion. It was during the Obama years. But then again, to have him testify, you write novels, and that's how you would love to see that novel end. But I tell you what, in real life, CNN has been pushing the Russia thing, Russia, all the time. And, of course, there was that rush to get that Anthony Scaramucci story out. He's part of one of the advisors to the president. And they linked him to a Russian scandal, and they had to retract it. And a couple of people, 3 people, resigned or got fired. The president has just tweeted out something brand new, and it says, fake news CNN is looking at big management changes now that they got caught falsely pushing their phony Russian stories. Ratings way down. All right, here's the President of the United States using his Twitterverse to take a shot at CNN, which, you know, we saw some of the statistics. 93% of their stories are anti-Trump, so this is not surprising.
Look, they should appoint an outside analyst, somebody of impeccable authority, somebody like a Michael Mukasey, who used to be the Attorney General of the United States, to come in and review everything at CNN and basically reset it. You cannot get to a believable network while Zucker is there. He clearly made a gamble last year to be the leading anti-Trump network. They've clearly done things that are absurdly wrong. I like lots of the people at CNN. I worked with them for a while. And there are some very, very good people at CNN with a very long tradition of being good journalists. But the culture of the overall system right now is very toxic. And I think they should bring in an outside person like Attorney General Mukasey to review the whole culture and to reset it so people could have faith in CNN again.
How about the victory for the president when it comes to the travel ban? We had the Supreme Court make a ruling yesterday, and they're going to take up the case in the fall, and they're going to allow parts of it now to go ahead, including that 90-day ban and then the 120-day ban on the refugees.
Well, 2 things. First of all, it proves that the president, in fact, was right, despite all the news media attacks. Second, it puts real doubt once again on the Ninth Circuit Court. I think the Ninth Circuit Court should be profoundly overhauled. It's the most routinely overturned court in the United States. It is consistently wrong, and I think that we ought to have a serious look at why is the Ninth Circuit so bad and what should be done to fix it.
Newt, congratulations on your book. You got the
Thanks.
topic that the whole world is talking about, and that is Donald Trump at its premise. Appreciate it.
Congratulations on your success. Great seeing you
Good
this morning.
talking to you.
Understanding Trump.
Thanks.
Meanwhile, straight ahead, you just heard Newt call out the Obama administration on Russia. Lou Jobs just wrote a book about Russia. How fortuitous for us.
Good Tuesday morning to you. Some quick headlines right now. Seattle's $15 minimum wage law is costing jobs.